Sarah Jenkins walked through the busy hallways of Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, carrying her usual cup of morning coffee. She was running a little late for her shift, something that rarely happened in her 8 years as a pediatric nurse. The summer morning was already hot and humid, typical for Atlanta in July, and she could feel tiny beads of sweat on her forehead as she hurried along. At 32 years old, Sarah had built a reputation as one of the most caring and dedicated nurses in the pediatric ward. Her colleagues often said her bright smile and gentle touch could calm even the most frightened children. With her dark skin glowing and her braided hair neatly tied back, she carried herself with quiet confidence, earned from years of helping heal sick children. "Good morning, Ms. Jenkins," called out Jimmy, one of her regular patients, a 10-year-old boy recovering from appendix surgery. Sarah waved back, making a mental note to check on him first after she settled in for her shift. As she rounded the corner toward the nurse's station, something completely unexpected happened. A man in a wheelchair came rolling around the corner at the same moment, and before either could stop, Sarah's coffee cup collided with his shoulder. "Oh my goodness!" Sarah exclaimed, mortified as she watched the coffee stain spread across the man's crisp white shirt. "I am so sorry." The man in the wheelchair looked up at her, and to her surprise, he was smiling. He had kind brown eyes and a warm face that seemed to light up despite the coffee accident. "Well," he said with a chuckle, "I guess this is one way to wake up in the morning." His name was Marcus Thompson, as Sarah would soon learn. He was 35 years old and had come to the hospital to give a motivational speech to the children in the pediatric ward. Despite being confined to a wheelchair due to a car accident 5 years ago, Marcus had made it his mission to inspire others with his story. "Please, let me help clean that up," Sarah insisted, already reaching for some paper towels from the nearby cart. As she helped him dab at the stain, she couldn't help but notice his strong shoulders and well-kept appearance. Even in a wheelchair, he carried himself with dignity and confidence. "I'm Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "And you must be the coffee ninja I've heard so much about." His playful tone made Sarah laugh despite her embarrassment. "Sarah Jenkins," she replied, shaking his hand. "And I usually have much better control of my beverages, I promise." They talked for a few minutes as Sarah helped him clean up. She learned that Marcus used to be a software engineer before his accident, but now he traveled around giving speeches about overcoming adversity. There was something about his voice that drew her in. It was deep and smooth, with a hint of joy that seemed to bubble up from somewhere deep inside him. "Would you like to come hear my speech?" Marcus asked. "I mean, you did try to drown me in coffee. The least you could do is be part of my audience." Sarah checked her watch. Her shift wouldn't start for another 15 minutes, and something about Marcus made her want to know more. "I'd like that," she said with a smile. As she followed him to the children's activity room, Sarah noticed how skillfully he maneuvered his wheelchair, his arms strong and confident in their movements. The children's faces lit up when they saw him enter, and soon Sarah understood why. Marcus had a way of speaking that made everyone feel special. He told stories about his life before and after the accident, making the children laugh and think at the same time. He talked about how being in a wheelchair didn't stop him from living a full life, and how sometimes the biggest challenges in life could lead to the most beautiful changes. Sarah stood at the back of the room, watching him interact with the children. Something stirred in her heart as she observed his genuine kindness and the way he connected with each child. She had seen many people come and go in the hospital, but there was something different about Marcus Thompson. As she finally headed to start her shift, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this coffee accident might have been more than just an embarrassing moment. Sometimes, she thought, the best things in life happen when we least expect them, even if they start with a spilled cup of coffee. After their first meeting at the hospital, Sarah couldn't get Marcus out of her mind. For the next few days, she found herself looking toward the entrance of the pediatric ward, hoping to catch a glimpse of his wheelchair coming through the doors. Her friend Lisa, another nurse at the hospital, noticed her distraction. "Earth to Sarah." Lisa waved her hand in front of Sarah's face during their lunch break. "You've been staring at that door for 5 minutes straight. Are you waiting for someone special?" Sarah felt her cheeks grow warm. Remember that motivational speaker from last week? The one in the wheelchair? The one you attacked with your coffee? Lisa teased. "How could I forget? The children are still talking about him." Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text message from Marcus. After the coffee incident, they had exchanged numbers, supposedly so Sarah could send him information about getting the coffee stain out of his shirt. But over the past week, they had been texting regularly. "Would you like to have lunch with me tomorrow?" His message read. "I promise to wear a coffee-proof shirt this time." Sarah's heart jumped a little as she typed yes in response. She tried to ignore the butterflies in her stomach, but Lisa caught her smile. "Girl, you're glowing." "Is that him?" Lisa peered at Sarah's phone. "But Sarah, are you sure about this? I mean, he's in a wheelchair, and your mama is so traditional." Sarah's smile faded slightly. She knew what Lisa meant. Her mother, Mrs. Jenkins, was a proud woman who had big dreams for her daughter. She always talked about Sarah finding a successful man who could take care of her properly. The fact that Marcus was both white and disabled would probably give her mother a heart attack. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was special. Over their text conversations, she had learned more about him. Before his accident, he had been a successful software engineer at a big tech company. After the accident left him paralyzed from the waist down, instead of giving up, he had turned his experience into a way to help others. He now ran a successful business giving motivational speeches and consulting for companies on disability inclusion. The next day, Sarah met Marcus at a small cafe near the hospital. He was already there when she arrived, sitting at a table near the window. He had positioned his wheelchair at an angle that left plenty of room for her to sit comfortably across from him. "No coffee for me today," he joked as she sat down. "I think I'll stick to water." Their lunch lasted nearly 2 hours. Sarah found herself fascinated by Marcus's stories. He told her about growing up in Boston, about his dreams of creating technology to help disabled people, and about the day of his accident. He spoke about everything with such honesty and optimism that Sarah felt herself being drawn in more and more. "The accident changed my life," Marcus explained, his brown eyes serious but warm, "but not in the way most people think. Yes, I lost the ability to walk, but I gained a new purpose. Now I can help others see that disability doesn't mean inability." Sarah shared stories about her own life too, about growing up in Atlanta with her strict but loving parents, about her dream of becoming a nurse since she was a little girl, and about the challenges she sometimes faced as a black woman in healthcare. "You know," Marcus said thoughtfully, "people probably think we make an odd pair, a black nurse and a disabled white guy having lunch together." Sarah looked around the cafe. She had noticed some curious glances from other customers, but she found that she didn't care. "Maybe that's what makes it interesting," she replied with a smile. As they said goodbye after lunch, Marcus reached for her hand. His touch was gentle but confident. "Sarah, I'd like to see you again, but I want you to know what you're getting into. Being with someone in a wheelchair isn't always easy. There will be challenges." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Marcus, I'm a nurse. I know about challenges, and I'd like to see you again too." As she walked back to the hospital, Sarah felt lighter somehow. She knew there would be obstacles ahead. Her mother's reaction, society's stares, the practical challenges of dating someone in a wheelchair. But something in her heart told her that Marcus Thompson was worth facing all of those challenges and more. 3 months had passed since Sarah and Marcus's first lunch date, and their relationship was growing stronger every day. Sarah found herself looking forward to their evening phone calls, weekend outings, and the simple moments they shared together. Even the challenges of dating someone in a wheelchair seemed smaller when compared to the joy Marcus brought to her life. One Saturday morning, Sarah finally gathered the courage to tell her parents about Marcus. She invited them over for breakfast, her hands shaking slightly as she prepared her mother's favorite pancakes. "Mama, Daddy, I've been seeing someone," Sarah said, watching her parents' faces carefully across the kitchen table. "His name is Marcus, and he's wonderful." Mrs. Jenkins smiled broadly. "Finally, you know I've been praying for you to find a good man. Tell me about him, baby." Sarah took a deep breath. "Well, he used to be a software engineer, but now he's a motivational speaker. He's kind, smart, and he makes me laugh." She paused before adding, "He's white, and he's in a wheelchair." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Mr. Jenkins put down his fork slowly, while Mrs. Jenkins's smile disappeared. "A disabled white man?" Mrs. Jenkins said finally, her voice rising. "Sarah Jenkins, have you lost your mind? What will people say? What about having children? What about—" "Margaret," Mr. Jenkins interrupted his wife gently. Let's hear our daughter out. Sarah explained everything, how they met, Marcus's successful speaking career, and how he hadn't let his disability stop him from living a full life. As she spoke, she realized just how much she had come to care for Marcus. Despite her mother's initial reaction, Sarah continued seeing Marcus. They went on dates to accessible restaurants, enjoyed movies together, and spent quiet evenings talking about their dreams. Marcus taught Sarah how to play chess, and she introduced him to her favorite soul food recipes. One evening, as they sat in Marcus's adapted van watching the sunset at a local park, Sarah noticed Marcus seemed quieter than usual. "What's on your mind?" she asked, reaching for his hand. Marcus turned his wheelchair slightly to face her better. "I've been thinking about us," he said softly, "about how much my life has changed since I met you. You know, before my accident, I thought I had everything figured out. Good job, nice house, perfect health. Then the accident took away what I thought was most important, my ability to walk." He squeezed her hand before continuing. "But meeting you showed me something different. You've never once made me feel less than whole. You see me, Sarah, not my wheelchair." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "That's because you are whole, Marcus. Your wheelchair is just how you move around. It's not who you are." "Even your mother's disapproval hasn't scared you away," Marcus said with a small smile. Sarah laughed. "Mama's coming around, slowly but surely. She noticed how happy I've been lately. And last week, she actually asked when she could meet you." "Really?" Marcus's eyes lit up. "Should I be scared?" "Terrified," Sarah teased. "But don't worry, I'll protect you." As they sat there watching the sky turn from orange to purple, Sarah realized something important. Love wasn't about what a person could or couldn't do physically. It wasn't about the color of someone's skin or what other people thought. Love was about finding someone who made your world brighter just by being in it. Later that night, as Marcus drove Sarah home in his adapted van, they passed a young couple walking hand in hand down the street. A few months ago, Sarah might have felt a twinge of sadness knowing she and Marcus would never walk together like that. But now she understood that their love had its own way of moving through the world. "I love you," she said suddenly, the words coming out naturally, as if she'd been saying them all along. Marcus stopped the van at a red light and turned to look at her. His eyes were shining. "I love you too, Sarah Jenkins. More than I ever thought possible." The light turned green, and they drove on through the Atlanta night, two hearts that had found each other against all odds, proving that love really does know no boundaries. 6 months into their relationship, Marcus had finally won over Mrs. Jenkins with his charm, intelligence, and genuine love for Sarah. It happened during a Sunday dinner at the Jenkins home, where Marcus showed up with flowers for Mrs. Jenkins and a rare jazz record for Mr. Jenkins. By the end of the evening, even Sarah's mother had to admit there was something special about Marcus Thompson. On a crisp autumn morning, Marcus was scheduled to give one of his biggest speeches yet at the Atlanta Convention Center. He had been acting strangely nervous for days, checking his phone constantly and having secret conversations with Sarah's father. Sarah noticed his unusual behavior but assumed it was just anxiety about the important speech. "You'll do great," Sarah assured him as she helped straighten his tie before the event. The convention hall was filling up with over 500 people who had come to hear Marcus speak about overcoming life's challenges. "Thanks, baby," Marcus replied, his hand slightly shaking as he adjusted his wheelchair. "Will you sit in the front row? I need to see your face today." Sarah took her seat in the front row, surprised to see her parents and younger sister already there. Even more surprising was the presence of Marcus's family. His parents and two sisters had flown in from Boston. Something felt different about today, but Sarah couldn't quite figure out what it was. Marcus began his speech as he usually did, talking about his life before the accident and the moment that changed everything. But today, he added something new to his story. "Life has a funny way of giving you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it," Marcus said, his eyes finding Sarah's in the crowd. "Sometimes it takes a cup of spilled coffee to meet your soulmate." The audience chuckled, but Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Marcus continued speaking, but now he was telling their story. How they met, how Sarah saw past his wheelchair, and how their love had grown despite the obstacles they faced. "And that brings me to the most important part of today's talk," Marcus said, his voice growing softer. "Sarah Jenkins, would you please join me up here?" Sarah felt her sister gently nudging her to stand up. In a daze, she walked up to the stage, where Marcus waited with the brightest smile she had ever seen on his face. Sarah, Marcus began, his voice full of emotion, you've shown me that true love doesn't see limitations. It doesn't care about the color of our skin or the fact that I can't walk. You taught me that love sees with the heart. To Sarah's amazement, Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The audience gasped collectively as he opened it, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. I may not be able to get down on one knee, Marcus said, his eyes glistening with tears, but I can promise to love you with all my heart for the rest of my life. Sarah Jenkins, will you marry me? The entire convention center fell silent, waiting for her answer. Sarah looked at Marcus, the man who had shown her what real love meant. She saw past his wheelchair to his beautiful soul, his kind heart, and his unwavering spirit. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, yes, yes. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers as Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger. Sarah leaned down to kiss him, not caring that 500 people were watching. She could hear her mother crying happy tears in the front row and her father's deep, joyful laugh. Marcus's parents rushed to the stage to hug them both, followed by Sarah's family. Mrs. Jenkins, who had once opposed their relationship, now held Marcus's face in her hands and kissed his cheek, welcoming him to the family. I hope you don't mind that I asked your father's permission first, Marcus whispered to Sarah as their family celebrated around them. That's why you've been having secret phone calls with Daddy, Sarah laughed, wiping happy tears from her eyes. I wanted to do everything right, Marcus replied, squeezing her hand. Because you, Sarah Jenkins, soon to be Sarah Thompson, deserve nothing but the best. As they left the convention center that day, surrounded by love and support from both their families, Sarah knew that saying yes to Marcus was the easiest decision she had ever made. Sometimes the biggest surprises in life come wrapped in unexpected packages, and Marcus Thompson was the most beautiful surprise of all. The months following Marcus and Sarah's engagement were filled with busy wedding preparations. Sarah had always dreamed of a spring wedding, and they set the date for May 15th, giving themselves 6 months to plan everything. Their families came together to help, with both mothers excitedly discussing decorations, food, and flowers almost daily. However, Sarah noticed something strange about Marcus's behavior. He seemed distracted during their wedding planning meetings, often checking his phone and disappearing for hours at a time. When she asked him about it, he would smile mysteriously and say, "Just working on a special surprise for our wedding day." One afternoon, while Sarah was trying on wedding dresses with her mother, sister, and future sisters-in-law, Lisa from the hospital called her. "Sarah, I just saw Marcus at the physical therapy center again," Lisa said. "That's the 3rd time this week. Is everything okay?" Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Marcus hadn't mentioned anything about increased physical therapy sessions. "Are you sure it was him?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Positive. He was with Dr. Richardson, the rehabilitation specialist. They were really focused on something." That evening, Sarah visited Marcus at his apartment. He was sitting in his wheelchair, looking more tired than usual, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "Marcus, is everything all right?" Sarah asked, sitting on the couch next to him. "Lisa saw you at physical therapy today. You never told me you were going more often." Marcus reached for her hand. "Baby, I promise everything is fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm just working on something special. Can you trust me?" Sarah looked into his honest brown eyes and nodded. Still, she couldn't help but worry. The wedding was getting closer, and Marcus's mysterious behavior continued. He started having regular meetings with Dr. Richardson, a well-known rehabilitation specialist, and spent hours at physical therapy. Mrs. Jenkins noticed her daughter's concern during their weekly dinner. "Something bothering you, baby?" she asked while they washed dishes together. "Mama, Marcus is acting strange," Sarah confessed. "He's always at physical therapy, having secret meetings, and looking so tired. What if—" she hesitated. "What if he's having second thoughts about marrying me?" Mrs. Jenkins dried her hands and turned to face her daughter. "Sarah Jenkins, that man loves you more than life itself. Whatever he's doing, it's for you, not against you. Remember how your daddy acted all mysterious before our wedding? He was learning to dance because he knew I loved dancing." Sarah smiled at the memory of her father's story. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was pushing himself too hard. One day, she found a medical bill in his apartment showing intensive therapy sessions and consultations with specialists. When she confronted him about it, Marcus just smiled. "Sarah, do you remember what I said in my proposal speech about love seeing with the heart? Please trust that everything I'm doing is because I love you." As the wedding day grew closer, the mysterious appointments seemed to increase. Even Marcus's parents appeared to be in on the secret, exchanging knowing looks whenever Sarah mentioned her concerns. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sarah visited Marcus after one of his therapy sessions. She found him in his apartment, looking exhausted but somehow triumphant. "Marcus Thompson, you're working yourself too hard," she said, kneeling beside his wheelchair. "Whatever this surprise is, it's not worth risking your health." Marcus cupped her face in his hands. "Sarah, my love, everything I'm doing is worth it. When you see what I've been working on, you'll understand. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Promise me you'll believe in miracles," he said softly, his eyes shining with determination and love. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "I already do believe in miracles," she whispered. "You're my miracle." As their wedding day approached, Sarah tried to focus on the final details, the flowers, the cake, the decorations. But she couldn't help wondering what Marcus was planning. Whatever it was, she knew it must be something special because everything Marcus did came from his heart. Little did Sarah know that the biggest surprise of her life was waiting just around the corner, and it would make their wedding day even more magical than she could ever imagine. The morning of May 15th dawned bright and beautiful in Atlanta. Sarah stood at her parents' house, looking at herself in her mother's full-length mirror. Her wedding dress was simple but elegant, a flowing white gown that made her dark skin glow. Her braids were decorated with tiny white flowers, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. "You look like an angel, baby," Mrs. Jenkins said, wiping tears from her eyes as she adjusted Sarah's veil. The past year had changed her mother completely. From someone who once doubted Marcus to becoming his biggest supporter, Mrs. Jenkins now treated him like the son she never had. "Has anyone seen Marcus today?" Sarah asked, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. "He's already at the church," Sarah's sister replied. "And girl, you won't believe how handsome he looks in his tuxedo." The small church they had chosen was decorated beautifully with white and purple flowers. 200 guests filled the pews, family, friends, hospital staff, and many people whose lives Marcus had touched through his motivational speaking. Sarah's father waited at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes filling with tears when he saw his daughter. "Ready, baby girl?" he asked, offering his arm. Just then, Lisa rushed up to them, slightly out of breath. "Everything's ready," she whispered to Mr. Jenkins, giving him a meaningful look. Sarah noticed but was too nervous to ask what that meant. The wedding music began to play, not the traditional wedding march, but a beautiful gospel song that Marcus and Sarah had chosen together. As the doors opened, Sarah got her first glimpse of the church's interior. The afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass windows, creating rainbow patterns on the floor. And there, at the front of the church, was Marcus in his wheelchair. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, and his smile was brighter than Sarah had ever seen it. She noticed something different about his wheelchair. It seemed newer, somehow more sophisticated than his usual one. As Sarah and her father began walking down the aisle, she saw familiar faces smiling at her. Dr. Richardson, Marcus's physical therapist, sat in the front row next to Marcus's parents, all of them wearing strange, expectant expressions. When they reached the front, Mr. Jenkins kissed Sarah's cheek and placed her hand in Marcus's. The pastor began the ceremony, speaking about love that overcomes all obstacles and sees beyond physical limitations. Sarah couldn't take her eyes off Marcus. He seemed both nervous and excited, occasionally glancing at Dr. Richardson, who gave him small, encouraging nods. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. They exchanged their written vows, both of them fighting back tears as they promised to love each other forever. Just as the pastor was about to pronounce them husband and wife, Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand. "Sarah," he whispered, "remember when you promised to believe in miracles?" Before Sarah could respond, Marcus pressed a button on his wheelchair's armrest. A small mechanical whir filled the church, and suddenly, very slowly, his wheelchair began to change position. Sarah watched in amazement as the seat began to rise, and Marcus's legs, supported by some kind of mechanical braces, started to straighten. The entire church fell silent. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized what was happening. This was what all those secret therapy sessions had been about. This was the surprise he had been working so hard to prepare. Marcus Thompson, the man she loved, the man who had been confined to a wheelchair for years, was standing up. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. She could hear gasps and sniffles from the congregation. Her mother was openly crying, and her father held Mrs. Jenkins tight, both of them beaming with pride. Marcus stood tall, supported by the advanced mobility device and months of intense physical therapy. He was shaking slightly with the effort, but his eyes never left Sarah's face. "I wanted to look into your eyes when I became your husband," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I wanted our first kiss as husband and wife to be standing up, showing everyone that love really can make miracles happen." The pastor, who had been informed of this surprise, waited a moment for everyone to collect themselves before continuing with a smile. "And now, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." For the first time in their relationship, Marcus didn't have to look up at Sarah. Standing eye to eye, they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, while their families and friends erupted in joyful applause and tears. The reception hall buzzed with excitement as guests couldn't stop talking about what they had just witnessed at the church. Everyone waited eagerly for the newlyweds to arrive, knowing that another special moment was about to happen, their first dance. Sarah and Marcus arrived at the reception in their decorated van, both still overwhelmed with emotion from the ceremony. Marcus had returned to his wheelchair for the short drive, but the special mobility device that had helped him stand was safely stored and ready for use again. "You kept this secret for so long," Sarah said, holding his hand as they waited to be announced. "All those therapy sessions, the mysterious meetings." Marcus smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Dr. Richardson found this new mobility device from Japan. It's not a permanent solution. I can only stand for short periods. But with months of therapy, I learned to use it. I wanted to give you something unforgettable on our wedding day." The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for the first time Mr. and Mrs. Marcus and Sarah Thompson." As they entered the reception hall, their guests stood up, clapping and cheering. Mrs. Jenkins rushed forward to hug them both, her face still wet with happy tears. "My babies," she said, squeezing them tight. "God is good." Dr. Richardson approached them with a small team of physical therapists. "Ready for your first dance?" he asked Marcus with a knowing smile. Sarah watched in amazement as they helped Marcus back into the standing device. It was a sleek piece of technology that wrapped around his legs and waist, allowing him to stand and make small movements. Marcus had spent countless hours practicing with it, building his strength and learning to balance. The lights dimmed, and the opening notes of "At Last," by Etta James filled the room. Marcus stood tall, supported by the device, and held out his hand to Sarah. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Thompson?" Sarah stepped into his arms, careful to help him maintain his balance. Though he couldn't move much, they swayed gently to the music. Marcus had enough mobility to hold her close and turn slowly, just as they had practiced in secret with Dr. Richardson. "I can't believe you did all this for me," Sarah whispered, looking into his eyes. "I did it for us," Marcus replied softly. "I wanted to show everyone that love doesn't just accept limitations, sometimes it helps break through them." Around them, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Mr. Jenkins held his wife close as they watched their daughter dance with her husband. Marcus's parents hugged each other, remembering the dark days after his accident and marveling at how far their son had come. Lisa, who had helped keep the secret all those times she saw Marcus at therapy, was recording the dance on her phone. "This is going viral," she said to anyone who would listen. "The world needs to see what love can do." As the song continued, other couples slowly joined them on the dance floor, creating a protective circle around the newlyweds. Sarah rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, feeling his heart beat against hers. "Are you tired?" she asked quietly, knowing how much energy it took for him to use the standing device. "A little," he admitted. "But this moment is worth every second of pain and every hour of therapy." When the song ended, their guests burst into applause again. Dr. Richardson and his team helped Marcus back into his wheelchair, and Sarah could see how exhausted he was, but his smile never dimmed. Marcus's mother brought them both glasses of champagne. "To my beautiful son and daughter," she said, her voice shaking. "You show us all what real love looks like." As they celebrated into the evening, Sarah kept looking at her husband with wonder. She thought about their journey, from that first coffee spill to this miraculous moment. Marcus had given her the most incredible wedding gift possible, but she realized something important. The real miracle wasn't that he could stand. The real miracle was their love, a love strong enough to overcome every obstacle, brave enough to ignore society's judgments, and deep enough to see beyond physical limitations. As she watched Marcus talking and laughing with their guests, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning of their story. Their wedding day had shown everyone that with enough love, determination, and faith, anything was possible, even standing up to dance at your own wedding when the world said you never would. 1 year after their magical wedding day, Sarah and Marcus Thompson sat in their new accessible home, looking through their wedding album. The photos captured every beautiful moment. Marcus standing for their vows, their first dance, and the joy on everyone's faces. "Can you believe it's been a year already?" Sarah asked, snuggled next to Marcus's wheelchair on their comfortable couch. She was wearing her nurse's scrubs, having just returned from her shift at the hospital. "Best year of my life," Marcus replied, putting his arm around her. A lot had changed since their wedding day. Marcus's motivational speaking business had grown even bigger after their wedding video went viral. People from all over the world had watched him stand up to marry Sarah, and his message about love overcoming all obstacles touched millions of hearts. The special mobility device that had helped him stand at their wedding was now part of their daily life. Though Marcus still used his wheelchair most of the time, he practiced standing with the device for short periods each day. Sometimes, on special occasions, he would surprise Sarah by standing up to hug her or dance with her in their living room. But life wasn't always easy. There were still challenges and hard days. Marcus sometimes had pain from his therapy sessions, and they dealt with curious stares when they went out together, a black woman and a white man in a wheelchair. Yet their love remained strong, growing deeper with each passing day. "Guess what?" Sarah said, touching her stomach with a mysterious smile. "I have some news for you." Marcus's eyes widened. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Sarah nodded, happy tears forming in her eyes. "We're going to have a baby. I found out this morning." Marcus pulled her closer, his own eyes filling with tears of joy. They had been trying to start a family for the past few months, and now their dream was coming true. "Dr. Richardson says the baby won't affect your therapy," Sarah added, knowing Marcus would worry about that. "You can keep using the standing device even as I get bigger." Just then, their doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Jenkins, bringing her famous Sunday dinner. Since the wedding, she had become Marcus's biggest supporter, always bragging to her church friends about her miracle son-in-law. "Come in, Mama," Sarah called out. "We have some news for you." Mrs. Jenkins nearly dropped her casserole when they told her about the baby. She hugged them both, crying happy tears. "Lord, you just keep blessing this family," she exclaimed. "Wait until your daddy hears about this." Later that evening, as they lay in bed, Marcus turned to Sarah. "Are you happy?" he asked softly, "even with all the challenges we face?" Sarah propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Marcus Thompson, I have never been happier in my life. We have a beautiful home, a baby on the way, and most importantly, we have each other. What more could I want?" Marcus smiled, remembering how far they had come from that first coffee spill at the hospital. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "people often ask me in my speeches what my biggest miracle is. They think it's being able to stand at our wedding. But that's not it." Sarah asked, though she'd already knew the answer. "No," Marcus replied, pulling her close. "My biggest miracle is you. A woman who saw past my wheelchair, past our different races, past every obstacle the world put in our way. You saw me for who I really am." Sarah kissed him softly. "And you saw me too. We're just two people who found real love." As they fell asleep that night, Sarah thought about their journey. From that unexpected meeting in the hospital hallway to now expecting their first child, their story had become an inspiration to many. But more than that, it was a testament to what love could do when two hearts refused to let anything stand in their way. Their future would have its challenges: raising a child, managing Marcus's condition, dealing with society's prejudices. But Sarah and Marcus Thompson had learned that together they could handle anything. Their love had already created one miracle, standing up at their wedding. Now, with a baby on the way, they were ready for their next miracle. Sometimes the biggest surprises in life come in unexpected packages. For Sarah and Marcus, what started with a spilled cup of coffee had turned into a lifetime of love, proving that true love really does see with the heart.